Welcome and thank you for joining us for Elder Climate Action's monthly national call. I'm Mark Cook, a volunteer in the Education Committee of Elders Climate Action. Tonight, I'm excited to introduce you finally to Sam Daley Harris. Sam will be discussing one essential missing piece, citizens awakening to their power. He brings a lifetime of experience in making incredibly positive change, and his tools work. Thanks to his finely tuned skills in education, public speaking, and grassroots organizing, we can learn to apply these lessons in our efforts to protect the planet for current and future generations with urgency. But before we get started, and for those of you who are new to ECA, let me welcome you and share that here at ECA, we are grandparents, great aunts, and uncles, and everyday folks determined to do all we can to leave a livable planet for future generations. Our programs, communications, and chapters are focused on engaging elders and building the cultural and political will needed to solve the climate crisis. Elder-centered and volunteer-driven, we seek to inform, inspire, and engage older generations to help advocate for climate solutions at the local, state, and federal levels. And we are always looking for more volunteers to join our national leadership committees, including the education programming team, who bring you tonight's programming. Reach out in the chat or email us at info@eldersclimateaction.org if you'd like to learn more. About this call. This is a 1 hour and 15-minute session. We'll hear from Sam, followed by a Q&A. So please feel free to add questions in the Q&A box. We will follow the national call with a quick 15-minute action party beginning at 8 p.m. Eastern Time with our partners at Climate Action Now app. We hope you'll stay on and take action with us. As I mentioned earlier, Sam brings many valuable skills to this discussion. Sam started as a symphony musician and then founded the anti-poverty lobby Results in 1980, co-founded the Microcredit Summit campaign in 1995, and found Civic Courage in 2012. The paperback edition of his book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy, was named an editor's pick by Publishers Weekly Book Life and was released January 2025. Kirkus Reviews wrote, overall, Sam's analysis of effective action is as persuasive as it is accessible, and his call to democratic participation is inspiring. Sam has been interviewed in NPR's Here and Now and on PBS's Laura Flanders and Friends. Sam's book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, Every Citizen's Guide to Transformational Advocacy, provides a powerful way to make a difference and heal our democracy in the process. It's not the only solution needed, but one essential missing piece: citizens awakening to their power. We're so happy to welcome you today, Sam, and glad to get going. Please take it from here.
Okay, great. Hi, everyone. I'm so thrilled to be with you and that this all worked out. I'm thrilled to be with Elders for Climate Action and the different elders groups. I'm going to talk like this on screen for the first 10 minutes, and then I'm going to go to my slides. And so let me just get going right now. Right after the November 2024 election, I sent an email to hundreds of journalists, and this is what I wrote in part. Quote, for many Americans, the November 2024 election delivered exhaustion and divisiveness. After the election, Tom Nichols wrote in The Atlantic, Americans must stay engaged and make their voices heard at every turn. Liz Cheney tweeted, citizens across the country must now be the guardrails of democracy. But most Americans still wonder how and even if they can make a difference between elections. What are the options? One, protesting, critically important, but we need people going inside also. Two, signing email form letters, which only 3% of congressional staff say is highly effective. Often gestures. Three, taking a nap until the next election. Sadly, the preferred route for many. But few in your audience, I wrote the journalist, know about number 4, transformational advocacy, which helps you change an issue and changes you in the process. This book, Reclaiming Our Democracy, I wrote the journalist, includes stories of people who met with elected officials on the other side of their issue, like Ellie Sparks, who went from experiencing what she called climate trauma to meeting with her members of Congress and in calling the experience sacred and profound, and Lisa Jordan, who, after meeting congressional offices in Washington, D.C., said, this work is the best medicine for when you're feeling hopeless or have sleepless nights. It's the best way to avoid despair. Both Ellie and Lisa were talking about their experience with transformational advocacy, the focus of this presentation. In my remarks, I'll provide a powerful way to make a difference, and as Mark was saying, and heal our democracy in the process. It's not the only solution needed, but it's one essential missing piece, citizens awakening to their power. So now I'm going to tell my story of self. The story of self was developed by Harvard professor Marshall Gans and asks what happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to your commitment. And so when I tell my story, I want you to think about your story of self. What happened in your life and what decisions did you make that got you to your commitment to elders for climate action and the other components? Here's my story of self. I have a bachelor's degree and a master's degree in music, and I played percussion instruments in the Miami Philharmonic for 12 years and taught high school music. And then in 1980, I founded the Anti-Poverty Lobby. It results. And a lot of times I'm asked, music, poverty lobby, what's the connection? And when I look back in my life, there's certain experiences that start pointing me in a different direction. The death of a friend around high school graduation in 1964 and the assassination of U.S. Senator Robert Kennedy around college graduation in 1968 got me to asking the questions of purpose. Why am I here? What am I here to do? What's my purpose? 9 years later, it's now 1977, I'm invited to a presentation on ending world hunger put on by the Hunger Project. And I go to this event thinking, well, hunger's inevitable. What do I know? I'm a musician. I mean, it's inevitable because there must be no solutions. Again, what do I know? Because if there were solutions, somebody would have done something by now. But I go to this event and it's obvious right away there's no mystery to growing food, clean water, basic health, literacy. I'm not hopeless about the perceived lack of solutions. I'm hopeless about human nature. People will just never get around to doing the things that can be done. But there's one human nature I have some control over, my own, and my questions. Why am I here? What am I here to do? So I get involved in a big way. This is the end of the story. In 1978 and 1979, I spoke to 7,000 high school students, classroom by classroom, on ending world hunger. And before I went into the first classroom, I read some statements from Jimmy Carter's Commission on World Hunger calling for the political will to end hunger. So I asked 7,000 high school students, what's the name of your member of Congress? I don't want to know if you wrote him. I don't want to know if you met him, just the name. Out of 7,000 asked, 200, fewer than 3%, could answer correctly. 6,800, over 97%, could not tell me the name of their member of Congress. And results grew out of this gap between the calls for the political will to end hunger on the one hand and the lack of basic information on who represented us in Washington on the other. These high school students are in their 60s now. And I always say, I had an early front row seat on the American Slumber Party in that poll that I was taking. In January of 2024, I did an interview on an NPR program called 1A. It goes to 350 stations. So it was a national interview. And I was blown away by how vulnerable the interviewer was, Todd Zwillich. And this was question number two. In a 13-minute interview, he said, the passive nature, this is question number two. He said, the passive nature to our politics now, you can feel beat down by it. I mean, this is my career and I feel beat down by it. This is on national radio. He said, I don't participate the same way others do because I'm a political journalist, but I do have to pay attention. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. I mean, I know you know that. What am I feeling? What is the way out of that? I was so blown away that he was so vulnerable. I mean, he was really speaking for millions of America. It's a grind. It's a grind, Sam. What's the way out of that? The first thing I said to him was Apollo astronaut Rusty Schweickart said, we aren't passengers on Spaceship Earth. We're the crew. Well, are we? And if we're crew, how does crew operate? The second thing I said was futurist and climate activist Alex Steffen said, in fact, these days, cynicism is obedience. Yeah, if I'm cynical, I'm obedient to the way things are. I'm not going to do anything. Why would I if nothing I do makes a difference? So, the main focus of this presentation is transformational advocacy, not transactional advocacy. Sign the petition, transaction complete, but transformational advocacy, where you're trained, encouraged, and succeed at doing things as an advocate you never thought you could do, like meet with a member of Congress and bring them on board to your issue. And when you do things like that, you see yourself differently. You see yourself in a new light. That's part of the transformation. So now I'm going to go to my slides. And so if you'll bear with me for a moment, I guess I can go there. And give me a second. Okay, great. Okay, great. So during Q&A, I'm going to put a sign up sheet in chat, and you can let me, it's fine if you don't sign up for anything, but if you're interested in any of these, you can let me know if you'd like to be on my Civic Courage mailing list and receive occasional updates. You can let me know you'd like me to connect with a group that works to deliver transformational advocacy, and I'll connect you. And if you do, I urge you to take what you learn and insights that you have back to your elders' work, whether it's Elders for Climate Action, etc. And if you know of a book talk possibility, maybe your class or a group or a book group or a place of worship, you can let me know that you know of a possibility there. First story. This is Maxine Thomas with her U.S. Senator Todd Young, Republican of Indiana. Maxine said to me, I had a heart for service, but I was clueless about advocacy, especially political advocacy. Maxine has a lived experience of poverty, and she joined a group called Circles. They meet every week for 14 weeks at the time to kind of strategize and get support in moving out of poverty. And her group realized they had a story to tell, and they Googled around to find a group that could help them tell their story. And she finds Results. And she joins Results, and eventually Maxine and two others get scholarships to go to the Results conference in Washington, D.C. She borrows luggage, goes to D.C., and the night before her first ever meetings with her U.S. senators and representatives, she learns that the Earned Income Tax Credit is about to expire. And the Earned Income Tax Credit in 2023 was about $3,100 going to low-income working families. And so this is transcribed from the book onto these slides. This is Maxine talking. Quote, the first congressional meeting on Lobby Day was with Senator Dan Coates, Republican of Indiana, and brought new ahas. He was there for the entire meeting. I can still feel it. I was a ball of emotions. It felt like an out of body experience. I was processing being in DC, and now I'm in an exclusive meeting. We're all dressed up. It was high level. The volunteers were polished and sharp, but I was scared and worried whether I would say the right thing. That's anyone on their first meeting with their US senator. I think it was Lisa who asked me, "Would you like to say anything?" I thanked the senator and I said, "I learned last night why I'm here. I didn't know I could come here from Indianapolis to talk to you, someone who represents us and can help us. I can't imagine what will happen if the Earned Income Tax Credit is taken away from families like mine. I'm able to take a deep breath and catch up on my bills because of the Earned Income Tax Credit. I look forward to tax time because that's the only time I can handle my financial burden. I like to take my kids to the mall to buy shoes without worrying if it will take away from other bills." Senator Coates straightened himself up and said, "Wow, this has been emotional. Results, you do a good job of training people. Where did you find her?" And then he thanked me. That was the year he retired. He was very connected, even though the Earned Income Tax Credit wasn't on his radar. He acknowledged my voice and thanked me for being there. That was her first meeting that day. After a full day of congressional meetings, Maxine said, "I was euphoric. I was on this high and felt I was part of something revolutionary. From I was clueless to I was euphoric, that is transformational advocacy." So, what do you look for to find an organization committed to delivering transformational advocacy? I simplified it to three things. One, recruitment and community building. Recruitment. The organization brings people in not to build an e-blast list, but to form local chapters so you're not working alone. And then the community building includes events like this one, your monthly meeting, a monthly webinar with guest speakers, Q&A, inspiration. Recruitment and community building. Two, training. How do you get the meeting with the elected official? How do you plan for the meeting? What do you ask for in the meeting? How do you write a letter to the editor? Two, training. Three, the organization encourages breakthroughs. They encourage their members to move out of their comfort zone because confidence grows, transformation happens when you're encouraged and supported in doing things you thought you couldn't do and succeed in doing them. And in the book, there's this drawing, a small circle on one side called your comfort zone, and off to the side is a much larger circle labeled where the magic happens. Um, and so it changes people, but does it bring change to an issue? Over the last 42 years, results volunteers have played a lead advocacy role in a nearly 66% decline in global child deaths, saving almost 10 million young lives a year compared to the early 1980s. When we started lobbying in 1984, UNICEF, the UN Children's Fund, was reporting 40,000 child deaths a day from largely preventable things, things like measles coupled with malnutrition. And that's fallen by some 66% to 13,425 a day. Here's evidence that results efforts played a key advocacy role in the nearly 66% decline. After results, volunteers generated 90 newspaper editorials, not letters to the editor, not op-eds, but meeting with editorial writers, and generating 90 editorials supporting a tripling of the Child Survival Fund. UNICEF Executive Director Jim Grant said in a handwritten note to results, "I thank you in my mind at least weekly, if not more often, for what you and your colleagues are accomplishing, but I thought I should do it at least once this year in writing." 27 years later, in a New York Times interview in 2013, former UNICEF Deputy Executive Director Kul Gautam said, "To a great extent, it was because of the receptivity created by results that U.S. funding for child survival increased so dramatically, and that led many other countries to come on board." 9 years later, 2022, Peter Sands, the head of the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, said this on a Results monthly national webinar: I know how powerful your voices and efforts are. We see that in the way you go up on Capitol Hill and talk to people from both sides of the aisle. They're hearing from across North America you care about this. This is one of the most powerful ways in which America leads the world. Imagine being part of an organization that's played a lead advocacy role in what's amounted to a 66% decline in global child deaths over the last 42 years. Then Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio entered with their demolition derby to global health programs. But here's a glimmer of hope. Uh, Last year, the maternal and child health, which is one of the drivers of this decline in global child deaths, was funded at $915 million. For this year, 2026, President Trump called for a 91% cut to 85 million. But the Republican House and the Republican Senate sent him a bill which he signed into law on February 3rd of this year, which provided the full 915 million to maternal and child health programs. I'm going to actually skip this little thing a little bit. I mostly do it to show it. This is from the president's first term, where he called for a 29% cut to the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And results got into action, got resolutions and sign-on letters. And I always want to show this slide. This is Margaret Smith from Dallas, Texas, with her Senator Ted Cruz. She said to me, I hold Senator Cruz's hands with two hands, and I don't let go until I finish my laser talk on the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria. And that year, this was 2019, that was the first time Senator Cruz ever said yes to a results request. He co-sponsored the Senate resolution supporting the Global Fund. And so instead of the president's proposed 29% cut, two House Republicans, two House Democrats stood on a stage in Lyon, France at the Global Fund replenishment and announced that the US Congress would provide a 16% increase to the Global Fund, which President Trump signed into law. By 2023, the Global Fund partnership had saved 70 million. Where do you read in the newspaper about 70 million lives saved since its inception in 2002? But then again, Elon Musk, Donald Trump, and Marco Rubio entered with their demolition derby to global health programs, but there's a glimmer of hope. Last year, the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria was funded at $1.65 billion. The president called for a 55% cut to 800 million for this year. But instead, the Republican House and the Republican Senate sent to President Trump's desk a bill that he signed on February 3rd that provided 1.25 billion for the Global Fund to fight AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria, which he signed into law. This is the last story and a quote. So this is Ellie Sparks. Ellie Sparks was a volunteer with Citizens Climate Lobby when she told me this story, and now she's on staff. Ellie said to me, when I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, I was suffering from climate trauma. I would read Bill McKibben's book, Earth, and I would weep at home and I would weep at work. And she said, I joined Citizens Climate Lobby, and 18 months later, I was sharing on a national webinar. She said, our executive director at the time likes to say, we're betting the farm on relationships. Now go get a relationship with your member of Congress and your editorial writer. And Ellie said, well, what does a relationship with a member of Congress look like? And how do you get a relationship with an editorial writer? She said, some in an organization use the model of a work relationship. My relationship model is different. So this is from Reclaiming Our Democracy, and I've transcribed it to the slides. This is Ellie speaking. My relationship model is different. I adore romantic relationships, so I use romance as my model. That first meeting with the editorial writer, It's like a blind date. Only you've decided beforehand you're going to marry this fellow. You're going to be sweet and interesting, not too intense. If it doesn't work out with the editor, you're going to marry one of his friends at the newspaper, business editor, environment writer, city editor. Someone at this paper will find you interesting and compelling. It's just a matter of being persistent until you find the right connection. I see the relationship with a member of Congress as an arranged marriage. If you live in her district, the member's staff has to meet with you. That's what our congressperson's ledge director told us in January. Now, this is January, and she's speaking 7 months later. 7 months later, since January, We've met 5 times with the legislative director. We schedule 45-minute meetings. He keeps us well over an hour. He doesn't want us to leave. Why? Because a good arranged marriage starts out cold and slowly heats up. That's different from a love match, which starts out hot and slowly cools down. Then Ellie got to the essence of transformational advocacy. During our conference, I met with 20 congressional offices over 4 days. I met with many folks whose view of the world was very different than mine. Going into their offices was hard. I had to let go of a lot of emotional baggage. I could no longer judge them or hold hostility in my heart toward them. I had to let go of my fear of climate change and my fear that they wouldn't listen to me. I had to center myself in love, releasing fear and centering in love. This is sacred and profound work. Don't forget, she started at a climate trauma and ended up at sacred and profound. Who thinks about advocacy as being sacred and profound? Obviously, it can become that if you find the right organization and open yourself up to it. So this is the sign-up sheet. I'm going to put it in chat during Q&A. If you'd like to be on my mailing list and receive occasional updates, rather occasional lately, if you'd like me to connect you with one of the groups that works to deliver transformational advocacy, I really ask you, if you do that, that you bring what you learn, bring insights, strategies back with you to your work with Elders for Climate Action. If you know of a book talk possibility, your club, your book group, a class you teach or you're in or place of worship, you can let me know that too. So I'm going to close with this quote from George Bernard Shaw's Man and Superman. I'm going to actually read it twice and then we'll go to questions. This is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature instead of a selfish, feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. And one more time, this is the true joy in life, the being used for a purpose, recognized by yourself as a mighty one, the being a force of nature, instead of a selfish, feverish little clod of ailments and grievances, complaining that the world will not devote itself to making you happy. I am of the opinion that my life belongs to the whole community, and it is my privilege to do for it whatever I can. I want to be thoroughly used up when I die, for the harder I work, the more I live. I rejoice in life for its own sake. Life is no brief candle to me. It is a sort of splendid torch which I've got hold of for the moment, and I want to make it burn as brightly as possible before handing it on to future generations. End of quote. And that is the cover. The missing puzzle piece is us on this puzzle of the American flag and the American democracy. So I'm going to put that sign up sheet in chat and then we can go to questions right now. And who would like
Okay.
to ask a
I am
question?
for the team. I'm not seeing questions, and I'm not sure if it's because of my role. So if there are questions I'm not seeing, but let me ask a couple that I have, and then we can get to the audience.
Yeah.
And if Jen or Paloma, you can see questions and ask them for me, that'd be great. How are things different now in the realm of advocacy, even in the short 2 years since the 2024 revised book came out?
Right. Well, okay. So they're really, really different. Uh, and still, I'm going to tell a story. I started coaching the United Church of Christ Climate Hope affiliates the month that President Trump was inaugurated for the second time, January 2025. And they started their first four chapters a year ago, March, like 2 months after the president was inaugurated. And the president called for this year a 55% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency. And the House called for a 23% cut, and the Senate called for a 5% cut to the EPA. And last August, by August, they had 10 chapters. By last November, they had 11. Now they have 14. Um, they started lobbying on, really minimal cut to the Environmental Protection Agency. And at the end of January, the president signed into law a bill that provided a 3.5% cut, 16 times smaller than his proposed 55% cut. So the question was, how have things changed? Well, they've really, really changed in that, you see very little congressional backbone, you see very little congressional pushback and that kind of thing. And still, in my talk, it was a 91% cut to maternal and child health, but then it ended up no cut. It was a 55% cut to the Environmental Protection Agency. But because people wrote, and they didn't do it all because they were so new, but they felt part of the action because they had dozens of letters to the editor, four op-eds. So it's really, really different. And at the same time, you can still get in there and, well, in this case, avoid the most draconian of cuts. Uh, Rather than it's not like you're actually getting to a visionary direction, but at least you're kind of in a strong way, finger in the dike, I guess.
Okay, I have another one. Um, you talk about 18 best practices in your book. Do you have a quick reference list folks can find, or maybe like a lot of actors that get on to promote movies, they don't want to say too much about the movie.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to just tell a story about one of them. And I'll tell it in this way. When I'm coaching a group that's meeting with a member of Congress who opposes their bill, I have them ask three questions. Question number one, we know you don't support this bill. What would it take to change your mind? And you're listening for assignments. What would it take to change your mind? Two, could you say more about that? Three, why do you think that is? So it's essentially a deep listening exercise. And I have a friend in Pennsylvania, Jay Butera. In 2013, he wanted to create, this is like a volunteer, he wanted to create a House Climate Solutions Caucus with a Democrat and Republican lead. And if there were four on it, it had to be four Democrats and four Republicans. So it was Noah's Ark kind of entering this caucus. And it took him almost 3 years to get the first Republican and the first Democrat to agree to be the co-chairs. And so he decided he was going to start it in South Florida because there were Republicans and Democrats down there and sea level rise. And so he'd take these trips to South Florida. And he was meeting with a member of Congress. He was actually a Republican down there. And he said, blah, blah, blah. What would it take to change your mind? She was not in favor of the House Climate Solutions Caucus, which didn't exist yet. What would it take to change your mind? And the congressperson said, well, if you could get the chambers of commerce on board. And he did. Miami, Miami Beach, Coral Gables, South Miami. He got letters signed by the presidents of, sorry, he comes back to the member of Congress, and the member of Congress says, well, if you could get the mayors on board. And he did. He got letters from mayor of Miami, Miami Beach, Coral Gables, North Miami. And in the end, this Climate Solutions Caucus, I put the sign up sheet again in the chat. The caucus started with 10 Republicans and 10 Democrats. And at the end of 2016, the year it started, President Trump was elected, and it fell to 6-6 because some were defeated or retired from Congress. And by the end of President Trump's second year, there were 45 Republicans and 45 Democrats in that House Climate Solutions Caucus. And so it's where I'm going with this, which is one of the 18 commitments, which is, bipartisan, reaching across the aisle. And in this case, that little set of 3 questions. Well, we know you don't support this. What would it take to change your mind? Could you say more about that? Why do you think that is? Which is essentially a deep listening exercise um, to get that kind of commitment. Uh, that's part of why when the president called for a 91% cut to the maternal and child health, there were just a handful, but there were enough Republicans and Democrats who actually there were 2 House Republicans and 2 House Democrats who led a grand total of 128 of their colleagues to sign one letter to the top appropriators, the chair and the ranking members on the Foreign Aid Subcommittee of Appropriations. And this Foreign Aid Subcommittee has 11 members. When this subcommittee with 11 members gets a bipartisan letter signed by 128 members of the House, they might pay attention. And so in that particular case, they did. So that's this whole working across the aisle uh, for durable change, not for like Biden does this and then Trump undoes it and then the next one will do it and undo it and what, where you don't get really the durable change that you really need.
Yeah, the previous question and answer are kind of relevant to today's or to the newest question. I think there's considerable overlap in today's highly polarized situation. Can you give an example of framing an issue on climate, for instance, to a Republican member of Congress? So, yeah, I mean, the person you were talking with earlier did give assignments about, well, I do it if,
Yeah.
and that's hard to find now.
Yeah. I'm going to tell a story. It's the weird part is I'm going to tell a story and go back to how it's kind of working but not working yet because of the fear of members of Congress, Republicans in particular. Um, there was a congressman. He's now a U.S. senator. He took Mitt Romney's seat in Utah, John Curtis, and he was elected in 2016 when Trump was to the House. And in 2017, his first year in office in the House, he announces that he's going to have an 8-hour town hall meeting hike. I don't know that I could do 8 hours myself, but and 8 people show up to this 8-hour town hall meeting hike. One of the 6 of the 8 from Citizens Climate Lobby, and one of them asks him. He was the mayor of Provo, Utah. What are you going to do about carbon? He said, I was the mayor of Provo. I never thought about carbon, that kind of thing. As a long story short, John Curtis creates a conservative climate caucus. And when he left the House to take his Senate seat, the Mitt Romney seat, there were 87 Republicans on the conservative climate caucus in the House. Now that's the good news. And then I'll make a couple of other things. 21 of them signed a letter to Mike Johnson urging him to protect the clean energy tax credits, but they sort of didn't. Can you repeat the question? What was
Well,
the
just yeah, the original question was just given today's highly polarized situation, can you give an example of framing an issue on climate, for instance, to
right? And
a
so the
Republican
bottom
member
line
of Congress?
is there's this latent, I mean, look, I'll say if there were 87 Republicans on the conservative climate caucus at the end of 2024, and then there was a new Congress, I think it might be down to 60 something. Some were greenwashing, but some were serious, like the 21 who signed a letter to um, Mike Johnson. There were 17 who signed another letter to the chair of the key committee on the clean energy tax credits. Well, that's really good, but what was missing is backbone, uh, you know. And so the other way of saying it is, there are, you're going to see more and more backbone. I mean, I guess you could say when 100, well, you remember the Global Fund to Fight AIDS, Tuberculosis, and Malaria, Trump called for a 55% cut, but he signed to 800 million, but he signed a bill that funded it at 1.25 billion. 160 members of the House signed one letter on that one. So these are little inklings of backbone. And so the framing is, I would just say it this way, you got to get into relationship with them. I mean, if you don't have a relationship of any kind, framing's irrelevant kind of thing. But as I say to a group, if you're meeting with a member of Congress, your goal is not to get them to co-sponsor that bill, which would be nice. Your goal is to start a relationship. And so if you get a co-sponsor and then you have no relationship and you maybe don't show up again or I don't know what, it won't really add up to much. So I don't know if that's helpful or if there's a follow-on. And
What about, okay, we have a couple more. Do you have a somewhat different approach when dealing with state, city, or county elected leaders as opposed to federal?
to be honest, I've not dealt a ton in this transformational app, but it can't not work in terms of relationship, finding common ground, reaching across the aisle. I mean, everything that when Ellie Sparks said, I met with 20 congressional offices over 4 days. I mean, there has to be some depth there. When I say it took him almost 3 years to create the House Climate Solutions Caucus, there has to be some depth there. But it's not like I don't know why some of these big changes um, in terms of what we've seen in my case with global child deaths or AIDS, tuberculosis and malaria, or in this most recent case, the Environmental Protection Agency, EPA. If you can get quote unquote big changes and in some cases protection from massive slashes at a congressional level, I don't understand why it wouldn't work at a state or local level. Everything about relationship uh, uh, and persistence, etc.
Okay, yeah, I think there was a question about regulatory agencies, but I think what you just said about state, local, county officials would be probably a
Yeah.
similar answer. But one of our folks asked a good question: how many of the ones who signed the letter you've referenced, who voted for it, actually did? In other words, they didn't just sign on; they voted.
Well, let me say it a couple
Consistent
ways.
with
One
that.
is well, I could say this for the EPA, but I'm going to use this maternal and child health. Uh, there are only 11 members of Congress who are on the subcommittee of appropriations that voted on it. And then it went to the appropriations committee, and I'm going to make up a number. There were like 40 on the appropriations out of 430, 40 who voted on it. And then it goes to the floor of the House. By the time it goes to the floor of the House, it's in some kind of massive, massive, massive bill that may include three different agencies that it's funding. So it's not exactly in these appropriations that you vote on it. You're kind of trying to influence what the subcommittee and the full committee, and then finally it gets into this massive, it might be a continuing resolution with three different agency fundings in it or whatever it's in. But
Yeah.
so it's a little more the RESULTS and results is the T in results is trim tab. And Bookminster Fuller would have said, if you're trying to turn an ocean liner, don't try and push it around from the front. Don't even try and turn the massive rudder. Find the trim tab, the little rudder at the back of the rudder, turn that, and then the rudder will turn and the ship will turn. And he said, if you try and turn the ship of state, don't try and push it around from the front or find the trim tab and turn that, and then the rest will. Well, what is a trim tab in terms of funding for the EPA? Well, the subcommittee that does the first appropriations bill, and then the full committee. And so that's the trim tab is my member of Congress signing that letter to that subcommittee. I mean, it's a little jujitsu in there, but what was the? I think I was hitting toward the question.
It's just consistency on saying they support something, and then when the vote for a letter, and then when they actually come to voting, they follow through. They do
Yeah,
it.
well, I said another way, it's a much bigger step to sign the letter than vote on the bill, because once the bill gets to the floor, it's typically part of some massive,
Okay.
too late to make a change thing. It's one little tiny part. I mean, even the EPA was one tiny part of this massive bill, appropriations bill. So you got to know where the trim tabs are and where the jujitsu moves are, and and start early and often rather than at the end when the vote comes, because the vote's going to be kind of stuffed into some much larger package, and the
Yeah.
yeah, the pudding
Okay.
will have
Well,
already been made.
we're kind of closing out on time, and Sam, I just thank you so much for joining us tonight and for sharing about your life and important work. Your commitment and passion is only surpassed by the incredible impacts you've shared. We're grateful to you for sharing your ideas for impact and the latest revision of your book. Now, we hope all of you who are on with us will stay for our 15-minute action party. We'll turn it over to Kaylee if Kaylee is on. And again, Sam, thank you so much. Appreciate it.
So great, and I'll send the slides uh, so that we can share them around.
Okay. Thank you.
All right. Hello, everyone. I am here. Oh, I've been spotlit. Hello. Thanks so much for having me on for yet another national call. As you maybe know by now, I'm Kaylee Beam, Climate Action Now's Director of Content, and I work with a wonderful team of volunteers to bring you actions like the ones you'll be taking tonight. So let me just share my screen and get us ready to all take action together. So you should be seeing it shortly. If you've been here before, you already know the drill and you can just get straight to work. But for those of you who this is your first time at an action party, what you're looking at here is our goal tracker. So on the left side, we have the lovely blue marble, which will fill in and iterate as we take action here tonight. Just like the last few national calls, the QR code and link you see on my screen will take you to an action carousel on the Elders Climate Action website rather than the CAN app. So for those of you who want to access the carousel on your computers, feel free to type in the short link or click on it in the chat. And let me just drop it in there really quick. All right, so there's that link. You can just click on it to get straight to the carousel. And if you prefer to use your phone or tablet, just point your camera at the QR code, wait for that little pop-up to appear, and tap on it to get to the carousel. Of course, if you've never used the carousel before, you'll have to put in some basic information to take action, like your name, address, email, and a personalized message that captures your feelings about climate change. And for those of you who already have app accounts but are using the carousel for the first time, you should not have to start from scratch. The carousel will see your email, recognize it, and prompt you to enter a verification code. Once you put that in, it should transfer all of your progress from the app to the carousel. And finally, for anyone who is used to using the app and prefers that platform, you can still access tonight's campaign there through the Campaigns tab under the Other section. So yeah, I see a lot of you are already in there taking action, getting started. So feel free to keep at it. Our goal is 100 actions. Obviously, at Climate Action Now, we're all about making it as easy as possible for people to really scale up their action taking and get in touch with their elected officials. And so tonight we've just got a wide range of actions for you to take. Some will be focused on sharing resources with your elected officials, sharing concerns about various climate and environmental topics. Others will be petitions to corporations, urging them to bolster their sustainability efforts. And while they won't be available tonight, we are hoping to get some pledge actions available on the ECA carousel soon. And these will be opportunities for you to commit to actions like, in-person meetings with your elected officials, so you can build those relationships beyond the messages you send, or commit to attending a town hall or city council meeting, and also volunteering for leadership with ECA. So that's all from me. Keep at it, and we have 15 minutes to hit our goal. I'm feeling optimistic.
Thank you so much, Kaylee, for getting us started on the action party. It's so fun to see all those actions start to roll in, and I'm trying to do some myself. I don't know if there was any other questions, Mark or Sam, in the that anybody saw in the chat box.
Yeah.
But Sam's still on, so we could take another question or two potentially while people are taking action. Or if there's anybody who has a question that you would like to ask Sam, please feel free to raise your hand or come off mute and ask your question, since we do have that option this evening also.
Yeah, there was one here. Can you build a relationship with a member of Congress when you are not in his or her district? My members of Congress are progressive and support what I support already. You're muted, Sam.
Let me say a couple things. One is, no, you can't build a relationship with a member of Congress who isn't your member of Congress unless they're your cousin. Then you can. But really, no, they're not interested in meeting with you. So the second thing I want to say is we talk, and it's in Reclaiming Our Democracy, about the champion scale. It's like I'll hear people say, well, my member of Congress is horrible. There's no reason to meet with them. Or someone will say, my member of Congress is really good on this. There's no reason to meet with them. And no, if they're opposed, you want to move them up to neutral and supporter. If they're already a supporter, you want them to become an advocate on not just support, but advocate for these issues or be a leader or someday a champion. And yeah, I could tell a story about that. I was working with this group, and they were in New Jersey, and they it was during COVID, and then Congressman Andy Kim was co-sponsor of their bill. But they weren't done. They met with his deputy chief of staff and asked if he would do a town hall meeting on the bill he's already a co-sponsor on, which means he'd have to study up on it and talk about it publicly. A week later, they get a call and said, yes, he'll do the town hall meeting and he'll give you 15 minutes privately before the town hall meeting. It was on Zoom because of COVID. So he gets on with them 15 minutes early, and they said, thank you so much for doing the town hall meeting. There were 65 on the town hall meeting. And they said, would you sign an op-ed for Constitution Day? This was all about constitutional amendment of getting money out of politics. And he said yes. So they kept asking the supporter to do an advocate action or, do a town hall meeting, sign an op-ed. They didn't stop with, well, my member of Congress is so progressive, but they kept getting them to take a next step to being more out there, you might say, about the issue. Now one last thing is you could buddy up with your cousin who's in Idaho or in wherever, you could buddy up with a friend from college or whatever, or neighbor that moved to Alabama or something, and find out if you could work with them to be effective with their conservative representative. So there are ways around it, but you one-on-one to not your representative is not a way to go.
Okay.
Look at that. We're almost to 100 actions. We're getting very, very close. I'm about to hit send on one, so maybe mine will.
I
Oh,
was
there.
just gonna say we are zipping towards our goal today. Great work, everybody.
Hey, Kaylee, I noticed something a little unusual and different that really piqued my interest.
Hmm.
Um, the Price is Right is a target. Can you expand on that?
Yeah, so we've been kind of trying to get a little bit, branch out with some of the actions and targets we reach out to, and we one of our volunteers had this idea of reaching out to game shows and streaming services like Netflix, HBO Max, and say like, hey, like so many people watch your content or tune into your programming, like can you help normalize some of these clean technologies, make EVs a prize, make induction cook stoves a prize. So just kind of trying to get a little bit more creative about our advocacy and think of targets who we traditionally haven't focused on through our actions. So yeah, I really liked that action. I thought it was a really clever one that volunteer thought of.
That's super clever. And I just love, the whole effort of opening that window of political will is like it's multifaceted, right? It isn't always just one avenue. So
Yep.
I do commend you guys for taking on a creative approach. That's really fun.
Thanks, Paloma.
Yeah.
And we are so far past our goal. I'm going to bump it to 150, and I think we can get there. So let's bump it up, raise the stakes, and keep up the good work, everybody.
Yeah, let's keep it going. We still have.
So, Sam, are you familiar with this at all?
I'm not. No.
Okay, it's just an app, and what they've done is the Climate Action Now folks have made it really easy to contact all kinds of different people about actions concerning the environment. And there's pre-scripts and things like that. You can add your name to petitions by just pointing to a button and clicking on it. You can skip some things if you don't want to, and you can certainly read the actions in their full length before doing that. But again, they go to members of Congress, they go to regulators, they go to companies, all kinds of things. So yeah, they're kind of canned a little bit, but we get volume from this, and they are well written, they're well considered, and it's just an app to reach out um, and make it pretty easy to do that.
Yeah, and we've definitely heard from some of our users that when they've gone to actually meet their elected officials in person, they're like, "Oh, you're the person who sends all of those messages from the Climate Action Now app." So when they finally make that face-to-face connection, it's like, oh, putting a face to the name they've been seeing in their
Or it might be,
inboxes.
oh, you're the person that did.
Right. Or it's, oh, it's you. But yeah, and we do encourage people to edit the messages if they as they see fit, if there's changes they want to make, or if they have their own story to share that's related to the subject matter, and
Mhm.
make it a little more personalized. It's a little bit easier to do that editing on the desktop, I think, than on the phone. But yeah, we've always had that as an option to try and make it a little less, a little less canned for
Mhm.
every message people send.
I see here that Susan Lewitt just brought up an interesting and important point up that she just earned another tree. So for those of us who are new to the CAN app, can you go over that program and how the trees tie into our comments and actions?
Yeah, so I should probably know the direct conversion, but what I know is for every several messages you send, every message you send, you earn points toward a real tree. So when you've taken enough action, you actually earn a real tree, and that gets planted by our planting partners at Earth Lungs Reforestation Foundation in Kenya. And so they're working to reforest the Kenyan National Forest. They have really strong ties to local communities, working to create job opportunities for them and improve community health and well-being. So they're doing really great work over there. And actually, the author of our Substack recently went on a reporting journey across East Africa, and he had the opportunity to meet the Earth Lungs team in person and do a mangrove planting day with them, which was super fun. But it just really drove home the great work they do. And I think so far, between the trees people have earned through taking action in our app and the trees people buy, either as you know, gifts for their loved ones or through our subscription services, we've planted over 600,000 trees with our planting partners at Earthlung. So pretty incredible, and just like another way that the actions that you're taking can have an impact beyond, getting these issues on your elected officials' radar, and making your voice heard. And we hit our goal again, 150. I don't think I'm going to boost it again, but just keep taking action for these next few minutes, and we'll see how high we can get it before the end of the hour. End of the quarter of the hour.
It's
So,
so fun to see so many actions coming in. I always love action parties after our national calls because it's such a great opportunity for us to just sit here and be in community and be in action together and send so many messages in a short amount of time. We're sort of inundating inboxes as we speak, and that's a good thing. Is anybody taking any other actions tonight they want to highlight? I was working on one right now that has safety language used on food products. The sell by, use by, freshest on um, messaging, the Food Date Labeling Act.
Yeah, that's a really interesting one because so much of food waste is driven by some of this confusion around product labeling. And so that bill specifically is focused on how can we, you know, and I think it's follows a law that has passed in California already, but basically reducing the amount of labels that are used on food to just two, which I think is use by and sell by, or I might be getting that wrong, but it just basically standardizes it so you'll only ever see two labels on food products. It really reduces that confusion and is a powerful way to kind of help reduce food waste. And I think one of the promising things about that bill is that corporations are on board with it too because it kind of helps standardize it and streamline it for them as well. So I think there was some statistic about 20 or 30 major corporations have, signed on in support of this bill or indicated their support for this bill. So it has a little bit of momentum right now.
so does Earth Lungs, are they planting trees all around the world, or is it just Kenya right now that's the focus?
Yes, it's just Kenya right now. I feel like they might have another planting site in another part of East Africa. I'm forgetting the location, but yeah, they're really focused on just reforesting parts of Kenya that have been deforested and kind of making sure that the benefits of their work, really, really hit the communities near where they operate and in which they operate. So it's pretty cool stuff. And let me actually see if I can find the link to our articles on the work we do with Earth Lungs because I think those are just great, fascinating reads, and you can also get some pictures of the planting sites and see, see the trees that you're helping to plant through your action taking. So let me do a quick search for that on our Substack. All right, so here is a compilation of the articles that we've written on Earthlungs and our partnership with them. So there's an interview in there with their founder and CEO Victor Mwanga, and we also had him on for a live event that we did late last year. But yeah, just feel it's definitely worth checking out if you're interested in Earthlungs and the wonderful work that they do, and just like seeing some pictures too, right? Um, of the impact of that you're helping to have through the trees you plant.
We just hit our time. It's 15 minutes after the hour, and I'm so happy to report. Look at how we've exceeded our goal, 177 actions tonight.
Great work, everybody.
That is fun. And
Good
I have to say, a
job.
couple of them were new to me. Really, really clever, original actions.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you so much, Sam, for joining us tonight. Thank you, Mark, for hosting such a great discussion, and Kaylee for joining us for this action party. Thanks to everybody for all of your actions tonight. And we hope you'll join us next month for really special programming. It's Intergenerational Month, the month of June. We always celebrate Intergenerational Month at Elders Climate Action. And so we'll be hosting two events. And you'll be getting more information about those events, as well as a live stream event that's happening on June 2nd, and in the upcoming bulletin. So watch out for the bulletin. We'll probably add something to the recording email that you receive tomorrow also. So keep your eyes peeled for that email, the recording, and all the links that we shared tonight. And you'll get a link to this action carousel so you can continue the actions that get totaled in this week's total. And thanks so much for joining us, everybody. Everybody, have a great night.
Thanks, and thanks, Sam.
Thank you.
Thanks so much,
Goodbye.
everyone. Have a great night.